Preston Banning grabbed the woman's backpack and hurled it into the aisle. "I said get out of this seat, now!" His face was red, his finger jabbing toward her like a weapon. "You don't belong here. Look at you. First class isn't a charity program for people off the street." He didn't care that the entire cabin was watching. He wanted them to watch. He wanted every single person on that plane to see him put this black woman in her place. He snatched her coffee from the armrest and slammed it onto the flight attendant's cart, liquid splashing across the floor. "Either you move her, or I will move her myself." What Preston Banning didn't know was that the woman sitting quietly in seat 1A owned every single inch of this aircraft. And before this night was over, she would own him too. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Dr. Nia Solis had not slept in 41 hours. She had spent the last 2 days locked inside a boardroom in Midtown Manhattan, finalizing the largest acquisition in commercial aviation history. Her signature on those papers made her the majority shareholder and newly appointed chairwoman of Transcontinental Airways, one of the most recognized airline brands in the world. She controlled the fleet, she controlled the routes, she controlled every single employee badge that carried that company's name. But nobody on Flight 247 from New York to London knew any of that. Nia walked through the jet bridge wearing a plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, and white sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a simple twist. No jewelry. No designer bag. No entourage. She carried a worn leather backpack over one shoulder and a cup of black coffee in her free hand. She looked like a woman who had been through a long week because she had been through a long week. She found her seat, 1A window. She slid in, buckled her seatbelt, and closed her eyes. That piece lasted exactly 90 seconds. "Excuse me." Nia opened her eyes. The man standing in the aisle was tall, silver-haired mid-60s, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. His tie was silk. His watch was gold. His face carried the kind of permanent irritation that comes from decades of people saying yes to every word out of your mouth. Preston Banning looked down at Nia, the way someone looks at a stain on an expensive tablecloth. "You're in my row," he said. "I'm in 1A, Nia replied calmly. "You must be 1B. Preston didn't sit down. He stood there blocking the aisle, staring at her like she had just told him the earth was flat. "There must be a mistake," he said louder now. "I specifically requested this row to myself." "I don't know anything about that," Nia said. "But this is my assigned seat." Preston let out a short, ugly laugh. He tossed his briefcase into the overhead bin with more force than necessary and dropped into 1B. But he didn't settle in. He turned his body toward Nia and looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. "Let me guess," he said. "Miles upgrade. Or maybe one of those diversity vouchers the airline hands out now." Nia felt the words hit her chest. She had heard comments like this before more times than she could count. In boardrooms, in lobbies, at conferences where she was the keynote speaker, and people still asked her if she was there to check the audio equipment. She had learned over many years how to let the sting pass through her without letting it settle. "I purchased this ticket," Nia said evenly. "Same as you." "I doubt that," Preston said. He didn't even try to lower his voice. "I've been flying first class on this airline for 23 years. Platinum Elite. And I can tell you right now, the kind of people who sit in this cabin don't usually show up looking like they just rolled out of a Greyhound station." A woman across the aisle glanced over. A man 2 rows back pretended to read his newspaper, but tilted his head to listen. The air in the cabin changed. It thickened. Nia said nothing. She turned back toward the window. But Preston wasn't done. He pressed the call button above his seat. The chime rang through the cabin like a small alarm. Within 30 seconds, a flight attendant appeared. Her name tag read, Brenda. She was blonde, mid-40s, with a practiced smile that looked like it had been ironed on that morning. "Mr. Banning, welcome back," Brenda said warmly. "What can I do for you?" "You can explain to me why there's been a seating error," Preston said, gesturing toward Nia without looking at her. "I was told this row would be private. I don't know how this person ended up here, but I'd like it corrected." Brenda's smile flickered. She looked at Nia. Her eyes moved from the hoodie to the sneakers to the backpack tucked under the seat. Something shifted in her expression. It was subtle, but Nia caught it. That small, involuntary calculation people make when they decide who belongs and who doesn't. "Ma'am, can I see your boarding pass?" Brenda asked. Nia pulled it up on her phone and held it out. Brenda looked at it for a long moment, longer than necessary, as if she were searching for a flaw that would explain everything. "This appears to be in order," Brenda said slowly. "Then check again," Preston snapped. "Because I'm not spending 7 hours sitting next to someone who clearly doesn't belong in this section." There it was. He said it out loud. "Doesn't belong." 3 people in nearby seats heard it. A young couple in row 3 exchanged uncomfortable glances. An older gentleman in 2C lowered his glasses and stared at Preston with visible disapproval. But nobody said a word. Brenda straightened up. "Let me speak with the lead attendant, Mr. Banning. I'll see what we can do." She walked away. Nia watched her go. She felt the familiar weight of it, the exhaustion that goes beyond tired muscles and sleepless nights. The exhaustion of being questioned in spaces you've earned the right to occupy. The exhaustion of watching people choose politeness over justice, comfort over truth. Nia could have ended this in one sentence. She could have said, "I'm the new chairwoman of this airline, and I own more shares than your net worth." She could have pulled up the press release on her phone, the one that wouldn't go public until Monday morning. She could have called the CEO, who reported directly to her, and had this man removed before the safety demonstration even started. But she didn't. Because Nia wanted to see something. She wanted to see what this airline, her airline, did when nobody important was watching. 4 minutes passed. Then Brenda came back, and she wasn't alone. Behind her stood another flight attendant, a younger man named Derek, and behind him stood a woman in a navy blazer with a gold pin on her lapel. The lead flight attendant. Her name tag read Marianne. "Ma'am," Marianne said, addressing Nia with the kind of tight courtesy that barely covers hostility. "We've reviewed the situation, and in the interest of making everyone comfortable, we'd like to offer you a seat in our economy cabin. We'll also provide you with a complimentary meal voucher for your inconvenience." Nia let the words hang in the air for a moment. "You want me to move to economy," she said. "It's simply a reseating for comfort purposes," Marianne said. "Whose comfort?" Nia asked. Marianne blinked. "The cabin's comfort." "The cabin seems fine," Nia said. She looked around. Nobody else appeared to be uncomfortable except for the man in 1B who was making everyone uncomfortable. "The only person with a problem is Mr. Banning, so why aren't you asking him to move?" Preston leaned forward. "Because I'm a Platinum Elite member with 23 years of loyalty to this airline, and you are nobody." The words landed like a slap. Not because they were true, but because of the absolute certainty with which he said them. In Preston Banning's world, your worth was written on your clothes, your skin, your frequent flyer status. And by his measurement, Nia was worthless. Marianne stepped closer to Nia and lowered her voice as though privacy could soften what she was about to say. "Ma'am, if you refuse to cooperate, we may have to classify this as a disturbance. And if that happens, we'll have to involve airport security." "A disturbance," Nia repeated. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat with a valid ticket, and you're calling me a disturbance." "We're asking you to cooperate," Marianne said. "You're asking me to give up a seat I paid for because a man who doesn't like the color of my skin told you to make me disappear, and instead of doing your job, you're doing his." Marianne's jaw tightened. Brenda, standing behind her, crossed her arms. Derek looked at the floor. Preston leaned back in his seat and smiled. It was the smile of a man who was used to winning, who expected the world to bend in his direction because it always had. "Ma'am, this is your final opportunity to accept the reseating voluntarily," Marianne said. "Otherwise, I will be forced to contact the gate agent." Nia looked at Marianne. She looked at Brenda. She looked at Derek, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. Then she looked at Preston, who was already pulling out his laptop like the matter was settled. "Go ahead," Nia said quietly. "Call whoever you need to call." And that's when things got worse. Within 10 minutes, 2 gate agents boarded the plane. They approached Nia with the scripted politeness of people following a protocol that was never designed for justice. They asked her to gather her belongings. They told her the airline reserved the right to reassign seating at their discretion. They used words like policy and procedure and operational decision words that meant nothing except that someone with power had made a choice, and someone without power had to live with it. Nia stood up. She slung her backpack over her shoulder. She held her coffee cup now cold in her hand, and she walked. She walked past first class, where Preston Banning sat with his laptop open and his arrogance unchecked. She walked past business class, where men and women in corporate attire pretended not to see her. She walked past premium economy, where a mother held her sleeping child and watched Nia pass with something like pity in her eyes. And she walked through the full length of economy, past rows of passengers crammed into narrow seats, past crying babies and tired families, and people who would never be offered first class anything. Every step was a decision. Every step was Nia choosing to remember this moment, to catalog every face, every averted gaze, every silence that could have been a protest, but wasn't. When she reached the jet bridge, Nia stopped. She turned around and looked back at the plane one last time. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a single text message. It went to her brother, Tyson Solis, United States Federal Marshal. The message was 4 words long. I need you now. Tyson's response came in 11 seconds. Location: JFK Gate 14, Transcontinental Flight 247. Don't move. 20 minutes. Nia put her phone away. She sat down on one of the cold metal chairs in the gate area and waited. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't call the press or post on social media or do any of the things that people expect you to do when you've been publicly humiliated. She sat and she planned. Because what Nia hadn't told anyone, what even her own board didn't fully know yet, was that her acquisition of Transcontinental Airways wasn't just a business deal. It was an investigation. For the past 18 months, Nia's forensic accounting team had been tracking a series of irregular financial transactions buried deep in the airline's books. Shell companies, phantom routes, revenue that appeared on paper but never materialized in actual operations. Someone inside the airline was laundering money on a massive scale, and the trail led to a network of high-profile business figures who used their platinum elite status as more than just a perk. It was a cover. And one of those figures was currently sitting in seat 1B opening files on his laptop that he believed were encrypted beyond anyone's reach. Preston Banning wasn't just a racist with an expensive suit. He was a criminal. And he had just humiliated the one person in the world who had the power, the evidence, and the motivation to destroy him. On the plane, Preston settled into his newly private row. He stretched out. He accepted a glass of champagne from Brenda, who brought it with a smile that said, "Everything is as it should be." "Thank you, Brenda," Preston said. "I know that was unpleasant, but you understand. Standards matter." "Of course, Mr. Banning," Brenda said. "We always take care of our loyal passengers." Preston sipped his champagne. He opened a folder on his laptop labeled Project Nightfall and began reviewing numbers that would, in any courtroom in the country, be classified as evidence of federal wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to traffic human beings across international borders. He had no idea that the woman he'd just thrown off the plane had been building a case against him for over a year. He had no idea that her brother was at this very moment mobilizing a federal response team. And he had absolutely no idea that in less than 20 minutes, his champagne would go warm, his laptop would be seized, and his entire world would collapse around him like a house built on sand. Back at the gate, Nia's phone buzzed. It was a message from her chief legal officer. "Board just confirmed the vote. You have full operational authority effective immediately. Press embargo lifts Monday, but all internal systems are updated. You are Transcontinental Airways." Nia read the message twice. Then she closed her eyes and took one long, deep breath. When she opened them, she saw the lights of approaching vehicles through the terminal windows. Black SUVs, federal plates. Tyson was here. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyson. "We're at the gate. I've got 4 agents with me. Also pulled the passenger manifest." "Nia, you need to see this. The man in 1B, Preston Banning, he's been on our watch list for 16 months. The Bureau has a sealed indictment. We were waiting for him to leave the country to execute. He was about to fly right into our hands, and he doesn't even know it." Nia stared at the message. The man who had called her nobody. The man who said she didn't belong. The man who had used the color of her skin to erase her humanity in front of an entire plane full of people. He was about to find out exactly who she was. The terminal doors opened. Tyson walked through first. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark tactical jacket with U.S. Marshal printed across the chest. Behind him walked 4 federal agents in full operational gear. Tyson saw his sister sitting alone in that empty gate area, her backpack on the floor beside her, her cold coffee still in her hand. His jaw tightened. His eyes hardened. He didn't ask if she was okay. He knew she wasn't. "Tell me everything," he said, and Nia did. She told him about Preston's words, about Brenda's complicity, about Marianne's threats, about Derek's silence, about the walk through the entire plane while passengers watched and said nothing. She told him all of it in a voice that was steady and calm and absolutely unforgiving. Tyson listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "That plane is not leaving this gate. I'm ordering it back right now. We're going to board, we're going to retrieve you, and we're going to execute the warrant on banning. Every crew member involved in your removal will be identified and documented. This isn't just about what happened to you tonight, Nia. This is about what's been happening on these planes for years." Nia stood up. She straightened her hoodie. She adjusted her backpack. "Then let's go," she said. Tyson spoke into his radio. "Control, this is Marshal Solace. I need Flight 247 Transcontinental Airways returned to Gate 14 immediately. Federal Authority. No departure clearance until further notice." The response came back in seconds. "Copy, Marshal. Flight 247 is being instructed to return to gate." On the plane, Captain Edwards had just received clearance to taxi when his radio crackled with a new instruction. "Return to gate. Federal order. Do not proceed to runway." The captain's face went pale. In 22 years of flying, he had never received a federal hold order on one of his flights. He picked up the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've been asked to return to the gate briefly. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll have more information shortly." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers looked at each other. Some reached for their phones. Others craned their necks toward the windows, trying to see what was happening outside. In first class, Preston Banning looked up from his laptop. Something cold moved through his stomach. He couldn't name it yet, but his body recognized it before his mind did. It was fear. Brenda appeared at the front of the cabin, her smile gone, replaced by confusion. "Marianne, what's happening? Why are we going back?" Marianne shook her head. "I don't know. Captain says federal agents are at the gate." "Federal agents?" Brenda's voice cracked. "For what?" Neither of them answered. Neither of them looked at the empty seat 1A, where a gray hoodie had been sitting just 15 minutes ago. The plane lurched to a stop. The jet bridge reconnected, and the forward cabin door opened. Tyson Solace stepped aboard first. His badge was visible. His authority was unmistakable. Behind him came 4 agents in tactical vests. Behind them, walking with the quiet certainty of a woman who had just watched the world reveal its ugliness and decided to burn it down and rebuild it, came Dr. Nia Solace. She stepped into first class. She looked at Brenda, whose face had gone completely white. She looked at Marianne, whose practiced composure had shattered. She looked at Derek, who was pressing himself against the galley wall like he was trying to disappear. And then she looked at Preston Banning. He was frozen. His laptop was open. His champagne glass was still in his hand. His mouth was slightly open, but no words came out. Nia didn't say anything. Not yet. She just stood there and let him look at her. Let him see the woman he had called nobody. Let him see the backpack and the hoodie and the sneakers and the brown skin that had made him so certain she was beneath him. Then Tyson stepped forward. "Preston Banning," he said, his voice carrying through the entire cabin. "I'm United States Federal Marshal Tyson Solace. You are under arrest, pursuant to a sealed federal indictment for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to facilitate human trafficking across international borders. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The champagne glass slipped from Preston's hand and shattered on the cabin floor. The champagne glass hit the cabin floor and nobody moved. Not a single person in first class breathed. The sound of it shattering was the only noise in the entire forward cabin, and it hung there like the last note of a song nobody wanted to hear. Preston Banning stared at Tyson Solace. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. For the first time in what was probably decades, Preston Banning had absolutely nothing to say. Tyson didn't wait for him to find his words. He stepped forward, pulled Preston's laptop from the tray table, and handed it to one of the agents behind him without breaking eye contact. "That's my personal property," Preston said, and his voice cracked on the word personal. "You can't just take that. I have rights." You have the right to remain silent, Tyson repeated. I'd recommend you use it. Preston's eyes shifted from Tyson to the agents, then landed on Nia. She was standing 3 feet away, still wearing her gray hoodie, still carrying her backpack, still holding the cold coffee she'd been holding when they marched her off this plane 15 minutes ago. But something in her posture had changed. She wasn't the tired traveler anymore. She was something else entirely, and Preston could feel it, even if he couldn't name it. You, Preston said, pointing at Nia. You did this. Whatever this is, you're behind it. Nia tilted her head slightly. She didn't respond. I want my lawyer, Preston said, turning back to Tyson. Right now. I'm calling my attorney. You'll have access to legal counsel once you're processed, Tyson said. Right now, you need to stand up, turn around, and place your hands behind your back. Do you have any idea who I am? Preston's voice was rising. The arrogance was trying to reassemble itself, trying to find its footing on the shifting ground beneath him. I'm Preston Banning. Banning Capital Group. I have senators on speed dial. I play golf with federal judges. You're making a career-ending mistake, Marshal. Tyson didn't flinch. Stand up, turn around, hands behind your back. I won't ask again. Preston looked around the cabin for an ally, for someone who would stand up and vouch for him, for someone who would say this was all a misunderstanding. But every face he met looked away. The woman in 2A suddenly found her magazine fascinating. The man in 2C stared straight ahead like he'd been turned to stone. The young couple in row 3 had their phones out recording everything. Preston stood up slowly. His legs were unsteady. He turned around and placed his hands behind his back, and when the handcuffs clicked shut, the sound echoed through the cabin like a judge's gavel. This is insane, Preston muttered. This is absolutely insane. One of the agents gripped his arm and began walking him toward the front of the cabin. As they passed, Nia Preston stopped. He looked at her with a fury that had nothing to do with seating assignments or first-class etiquette. This was the rage of a man who had just realized that the person he considered the least important human being on this plane had turned out to be the most dangerous. Who the hell are you? He whispered. Nia looked at him. She let 3 full seconds pass before she spoke. I'm the owner of this airline, Mr. Banning. Every plane, every route, every seat, including the one you just had me thrown out of. The color drained from Preston's face so completely that he looked like a man watching his own ghost walk past him. His lips moved, but nothing came out. The agent tugged his arm and moved him forward, and Preston Banning walked off that plane in handcuffs, past the same rows of passengers that Nia had walked past in humiliation just minutes before. The difference was that nobody was silent this time. The murmurs started in economy and moved forward like a wave. Phones were raised. Videos were recording. The story was already spreading before Preston even reached the jet bridge. Nia watched him go. She felt Tyson's hand on her shoulder. You okay? He asked quietly. No, she said. But I will be. Tyson nodded. He turned to the cabin and raised his voice so every crew member could hear. This aircraft is grounded until further notice. No crew member is to leave this plane. Federal investigators will need statements from each of you. Brenda, who had been standing frozen near the galley since Tyson boarded, suddenly came to life. Marshal, I don't understand what's happening. We were just following procedure. The passenger in 1A was causing a disruption, and we handled it according to airline policy. Tyson turned to look at her. His gaze was the kind that makes people wish they had stayed quiet. The passenger in 1A, Tyson said slowly, is Dr. Nia Solis. She is the chairwoman of Transcontinental Airways and the majority shareholder of this company. She is also a key federal witness in an ongoing investigation, and you removed her from this aircraft at the request of a man who is currently being charged with fraud, money laundering, and human trafficking. Brenda's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes went wide and wet. I didn't know, she whispered. How could I have known? That's exactly the problem, Nia said, stepping forward. You didn't need to know who I was to treat me like a human being. You saw a black woman in casual clothes sitting in first class, and you decided I didn't belong. You didn't check because you didn't care. You chose his comfort over my dignity because he had a platinum card and I had a hoodie. That's not what happened, Brenda stammered. Mr. Banning is a valued customer. He's been flying with us for over 20 years. We have protocols for high-value passengers. You have protocols for high-value passengers, Nia repeated. Tell me, Brenda, what's the protocol for passengers who are just people? Regular people who paid for their ticket and showed up and expected to be treated with basic respect. Is there a protocol for them? Brenda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Marianne stepped in from behind her, trying to salvage what was already unsalvageable. Dr. Solis, if we had known your identity, obviously this situation would have been handled very differently. And that, Nia said, is the most damning thing you could possibly say. Marianne flinched like she'd been struck. Nia turned away from them. She needed a moment. The adrenaline that had been carrying her for the last 20 minutes was starting to thin, and underneath it was something raw and heavy that she wasn't ready to deal with. Not here, not in front of these people. Tyson appeared beside her. We've got Banning's laptop secured. My team will transport it to the field office for forensic analysis tonight. But Nia, there's something else. She looked at him. When we pulled the passenger manifest, Banning wasn't the only name that flagged. There are 2 other passengers on this flight who are connected to the same network. They're in business class. Seats 4C and 7A. We're holding them for questioning. Nia closed her eyes. 18 months of investigation. 18 months of following money through shell companies and phantom routes and offshore accounts, and here they were. 3 of them, on the same flight, heading to London where the network's European operations were headquartered. They were going to a meeting, Nia said. That's why they're all on the same plane. Whatever they're planning in London, it's happening soon. Tyson nodded. That's our read too. The Bureau's London office has been notified. They're moving on the European end tonight. Tonight, Nia repeated. She opened her eyes. The exhaustion was still there, but something else was burning through it now. Purpose. The kind that doesn't come from anger or revenge, but from the deep, bone-level knowledge that you are exactly where you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you were put here to do. I need to make a call, Nia said. She stepped into the jet bridge away from the cabin and dialed her chief legal officer, Raymond Park. He picked up on the first ring. I saw the news alerts, Raymond said. Federal agents at JFK transcontinental flight grounded. Please tell me this isn't what I think it is. It's exactly what you think it is, Nia said. Preston Banning has been arrested. 2 additional suspects are being detained. I need the legal team on standby for emergency injunctions. And I need you to pull every internal communication between our customer relations department and Banning's account. Every email, every call log, every special request. Nia, the press embargo doesn't lift until Monday. If this gets out before the official announcement, the stock price could. Raymond, Nia interrupted. A man just had me physically removed from my own airplane because I'm black and he didn't like the way I was dressed. The stock price is not my primary concern right now. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what do you need? I need everything. And I need it by morning. She hung up and stood there for a moment in the empty jet bridge. Through the small window, she could see the flashing lights of federal vehicles on the tarmac below. She could see agents moving around the plane. She could see the shadow of a world that was about to change. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dr. Solis, this is Captain Edwards. I've been informed of the situation. I want you to know that I was not involved in the decision to remove you from the aircraft, and I am deeply sorry for what occurred on my flight. I am at your disposal. Nia read the message and put her phone away. She would deal with the captain later. Right now, she needed to go back inside that plane, because what happened next would determine not just the future of this airline, but the future of every passenger who had ever been judged by the color of their skin instead of the content of their character. She walked back into the cabin. First class was a crime scene now. 2 agents were photographing Banning's seat area. Another was cataloging the contents of his briefcase. The champagne stain on the floor where his glass had shattered was being carefully avoided by everyone who passed. Tyson was standing near the galley speaking with Brenda and Marianne. Their faces were ashen. Derek stood behind them, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, his eyes red. Marshal, please, Brenda was saying. I've been with this airline for 17 years. I have a perfect record. I've never had a single complaint. You've never had a complaint, Tyson said, because the people you mistreated never had the power to file one. Brenda's composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face. I was just doing what Mr. Banning asked. He's a platinum member. We're trained to accommodate our high-tier passengers. You're trained to accommodate them, Nia said, and every head turned toward her. You're not trained to weaponize them. There is a difference between giving someone extra legroom and giving them the authority to decide who deserves to fly. You gave Preston Banning that authority, Brenda. You gave him the power to look at another human being and declare them unworthy, and then you enforced his judgment with the full weight of this airline's uniform. Brenda couldn't look at her. She stared at the floor, her shoulders shaking. Marianne tried one more time. Dr. Solace, in the heat of the moment, decisions are made quickly. We assess the situation and... You assess the situation. Nia cut her off. What did you assess, Marianne? My clothes, my skin, my hair. What part of me did you look at and decide wasn't worth protecting? Marianne's mouth tightened into a thin line. She had no answer, because there was no answer that wouldn't condemn her. Derek suddenly spoke up from behind them. His voice was shaky, but determined. I tried to say something. Everyone looked at him. When Brenda came back to the galley and told us Mr. Banning wanted the woman in 1A removed, I said it wasn't right. I said her ticket was valid and we had no grounds. Brenda told me to stay in the back and handle the economy cabin. She said this was a first-class matter, and I didn't have the seniority to get involved. Brenda spun toward him. Derek, that is not what happened. It is exactly what happened. Derek said, his voice stronger now. And when Marianne came up and agreed to move the passenger, I told her it was wrong too. She told me to drop it, or she'd write me up for insubordination. I have the text messages on my phone where I told my wife what was happening in real time because I knew this was going to go bad. Tyson looked at Derek with something that might have been respect. We'll need those messages. You can have them right now, Derek said, already pulling out his phone. Nia watched this young man, this flight attendant, who probably made a fraction of what Preston Banning spent on a single dinner stand-up, and tell the truth when the people above him chose silence. Something shifted in her chest. Not everything was broken. Not everyone chose the easy path. What's your full name, Derek? Nia asked. Derek Okafor, ma'am. Derek, when this is over, I'd like to speak with you about your future with this airline. You showed more integrity in this cabin tonight than anyone else wearing this company's uniform. Derek nodded. His eyes were still red, but he stood a little taller. Tyson's radio crackled. Marshal Solace, we've completed the preliminary review of the laptop. You and Dr. Solace need to see this immediately. Tyson looked at Nia. Ready. I've been ready for 18 months, she said. They walked off the plane together down the jet bridge and into the gate area that had been converted into a temporary federal operations center. Agents had set up equipment on the terminal counters. Preston Banning's laptop was open on a folding table, its screen glowing. The lead forensic analyst, a woman named Agent Torres, looked up when they approached. Dr. Solace, Marshal Solace. We cracked the encryption faster than expected because Banning was already logged into several of his secure platforms when the laptop was seized. He didn't have time to log out or wipe anything. What did you find? Tyson asked. Agent Torres turned the screen toward them. Project Nightfall. It's the operational codename for the network's logistics arm. These files contain shipping manifests, financial transfers, and communication logs between Banning and at least 14 other individuals across 6 countries. But that's not the worst of it. She clicked to another folder. The screen filled with rows of data, names, ages, photographs. Nia felt her stomach drop. These are people, Agent Torres said quietly. 237 people, men, women, and children. These are the individuals who have been moved through the network over the past 3 years, using transcontinental airways routes as cover. Banning used his access and his relationships within the airline to manipulate cargo manifests and create phantom passenger bookings that mask the movement of trafficking victims across international borders. The room went silent. Tyson's hand curled into a fist at his side. Nia gripped the edge of the table so hard, her knuckles went pale. 237 people. She had known the numbers would be bad. Her forensic team had estimated somewhere around 100. But 237. Men, women, and children. Moved like cargo through an airline that bore her name now. Hidden behind the same platinum membership that Brenda had valued more than Nia's humanity. There's one more thing, Agent Torres said. She pulled up an email chain. This communication is from 6 days ago. Banning was coordinating with his London contacts to move a group of 19 people through Heathrow within the next 72 hours. That's what tonight's flight was about. He wasn't going to London for business, at least not the kind of business anyone would put on a tax return. Tyson grabbed his radio. Get me the Bureau's London desk, now. We have a 72-hour window on a live operation, 19 potential victims. I need the Heathrow team mobilized within the hour. Naya stepped back from the table. Her hands were trembling, not from fear. From the weight of knowing that every minute Preston Banning had spent on her airplanes sipping champagne in first class being called sir, and being pampered by people like Brenda, he had been trafficking human beings, and the airline had made it possible. Her airline. She pulled out her phone and called Raymond Park again. Raymond, I need an emergency board meeting, tonight, video conference, every member. Naya, it's almost midnight on the East Coast. Half the board is... I don't care if they're asleep, Raymond. I don't care if they're on vacation. I don't care if they're on the moon. Get them on a call in 90 minutes. We have a crisis that makes the stock price look like a rounding error. She hung up. Tyson was watching her. You're going to burn this whole thing down, aren't you? He said. No, Nia said. I'm going to rebuild it. But first, yes. I'm going to burn down every part that let this happen. Tyson almost smiled. Almost. Back on the plane, the passengers were growing restless. Word was spreading through whispered conversations and frantic text messages. The woman who was removed from first class was the owner of the airline. The man who demanded her removal was being arrested by federal agents. Something about fraud. Something about trafficking. Something about a scandal that was going to be all over the news by morning. In seat 14, a woman named Grace Holloway held her phone with shaking hands. She had been one of the passengers who watched Nia walk through economy class. She had seen the look on Nia's face. She had felt the shame of sitting there and doing nothing. And now she was typing a post that would become the first public account of what happened on Flight 247. I just watched a black woman get thrown off a first-class flight because a white man decided she didn't belong, Grace wrote. The crew helped him do it. They smiled while they did it. And then federal agents came and arrested him. The woman they humiliated owns the entire airline. I sat there and said nothing. I'm saying something now. She posted it. Within 4 minutes, it had been shared 200 times. Within 20 minutes, it had been shared 10,000 times. Within an hour, it would reach every major news outlet in the country. The world was about to meet Dr. Nia Solis. And the world was going to have a lot to say. Grace Holloway's post hit 50,000 shares before Naya even made it back inside the terminal. By the time she sat down across from Tyson at the makeshift operations table, her phone had started buzzing with messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Board members, old classmates, her college roommate, her mother's pastor. Everyone had seen it, or heard about it, or been forwarded the post by someone who couldn't believe what they were reading. Nia silenced her phone and put it face down on the table. It's out there, Tyson said. He didn't need to explain what he meant. Good, Nia said. Let it spread. Tyson raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Once this goes viral, you lose control of the narrative. I never had control of the narrative, Tyson. The narrative was written the second Brenda looked at my sneakers and decided I didn't deserve my seat. The only thing that's changed is now the world gets to watch. Tyson leaned back in his chair and studied his sister. He had seen her navigate hostile boardrooms, congressional hearings, and a hostile takeover attempt that would have broken most people. But he had never seen this particular expression on her face before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't exhaustion. It was resolve that had been forged in something deeper than strategy. The 2 business-class passengers, Nia said. What's their status? Separated and being held in interview rooms down the hall. Agents are running their identities now. One of them, Seat 4C, his name is Martin Voss, German national. He flagged immediately on Interpol. The other one, Seat 7A, is a woman named Catherine Liang, U.S. citizen based in Los Angeles. Her name appeared in 7 of the financial transfers we pulled from Banning's laptop. Catherine Liang, Nia repeated. The name triggered something. She pulled her phone back and scrolled through a folder of documents her forensic team had compiled months ago. Tyson Catherine Liang is the registered agent for 3 of the shell companies in our investigation. She's not just connected to the network, she's the one who built the financial architecture. Tyson sat forward. You're telling me the accountant is on this plane. I'm telling you the architect is on this plane. Banning was the face. Voss was the European logistics. But Liang designed the system that made the money invisible. Without her, the whole network collapses. Tyson grabbed his radio. Torres, I need you in interview room B, priority. The woman in 7A is a higher value target than we initially assessed. Dr. Solis has additional intelligence. The radio crackled back. Copy. On my way. Nia stood up. I want to be in that room. Absolutely not, Tyson said. You're a witness, Nia. You can't be in a federal interrogation. I'm not asking to interrogate her. I'm asking to observe. You have a two-way mirror in there. Let me watch. Tyson hesitated. Every protocol in his training told him to keep Nia away from this. But every instinct he had as her brother, as someone who had watched her work 18 months to get to this moment, told him she had earned it. You watch. You don't speak. You don't react. If she sees you through that glass, it could compromise everything. She won't see me, Nia said. Women like Catherine Liang never see women like me. That's the whole problem. Tyson led her down a corridor that had been hastily secured by federal agents. Airport security had cleared the area, and two armed marshals stood outside a door marked with a temporary placard that read, Federal use only. Tyson nodded to them, and they stepped aside. The observation room was small and cold. Through the two-way mirror, Nia could see Catherine Liang sitting at a metal table. She was mid-50s, impeccably dressed in a cream blazer and silk blouse, her hair perfectly styled. Her hands were folded on the table, with a composure that suggested she had been expecting this moment for a very long time. Agent Torres entered the interrogation room and sat across from her. She placed a folder on the table, but didn't open it. Ms. Liang. I'm Agent Torres with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're being detained in connection with an ongoing federal investigation into financial crimes and conspiracy. Do you understand? Catherine Liang smiled. It was a small, precise smile that carried no warmth whatsoever. I understand perfectly, Agent Torres, and I'd like my attorney present before we continue. Your attorney has been contacted. While we wait, I'd like to ask you a few preliminary questions. No, Catherine said. You'd like to see if I panic and say something incriminating before my lawyer gets here. I've been audited by the IRS 4 times, Agent Torres. I've sat across from people far more intimidating than you. I don't panic. Torres didn't react. She opened the folder and slid a single photograph across the table. It was a printout from Banning's laptop. A financial transfer record showing $340,000 moving from one of Catherine's shell companies to an account in Zurich. Catherine looked at it. Her expression didn't change, not even a flicker. Where did you get this? She asked. From Preston Banning's personal computer, which was seized approximately 40 minutes ago when Mr. Banning was arrested on this aircraft. For the first time, something moved behind Catherine Liang's eyes. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. The rapid mechanical processing of a mind that was already restructuring its defense strategy around this new information. Preston was arrested, Catherine said flatly. Preston is in federal custody, along with Martin Voss, and we have full access to his unencrypted files, Ms. Liang. Every transaction, every communication, every name. Catherine's jaw tightened. She unfolded her hands and placed them flat on the table, fingers spread. I want to make something very clear, Catherine said. Whatever Preston Banning did with his finances is his business. I am a financial consultant. I set up legal corporate structures for clients. What those clients do with those structures after I set them up is not my responsibility. That's an interesting position, Torres said. Because the documents on Mr. Banning's laptop include emails from you providing detailed instructions on how to route payments through those structures, specifically to avoid detection by federal authorities. In one email dated March 14th, you wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, that the Zurich route needed to be split into smaller transfers to stay under reporting thresholds. That's not consulting, Ms. Liang. That's structuring. And structuring is a federal crime. Behind the mirror, Nia watched Catherine's composure crack. It was almost invisible, just a slight tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible shift in her breathing. But Nia saw it. She had spent 18 months studying this woman's work, following the trails she built, mapping the labyrinth she designed to hide the movement of money and people across borders. And now she was watching the architect realize that her building was on fire. Catherine leaned forward. How did you get Preston's laptop? He never leaves it unguarded. He has it encrypted with military grade. He was a little busy being handcuffed, Torres said. Catherine sat back. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds. When she opened them, something had changed. The composure was gone. In its place, was something sharper, more dangerous. Survival instinct. "I want a deal," Catherine said. Torres didn't blink. "You haven't been charged yet. I don't need to be charged to know where this is going. You have Preston, you have Voss, you have the laptop. Within 72 hours, you'll have enough to indict everyone in the network. But you don't have the network itself. You have names and numbers. You don't have the system. You don't know how the money actually moves. You don't know the routes, the timing, the triggers that activate each transfer. Only one person in the world knows all of that." She pointed at herself. "I built it. Every piece, every connection, every failsafe. And I can take it apart for you piece by piece in a way that not only dismantles the financial structure, but leads you directly to the people who are holding those 237 victims right now." Nia's breath caught. Catherine knew the number. She knew exactly how many people had been moved through the network. That wasn't the knowledge of a consultant who set up corporate structures and walked away. That was the knowledge of someone who was in it up to her neck. Torres kept her voice level. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Full cooperation. Every document, every access code, every contact. I'll map the entire network from top to bottom. In exchange, I want immunity from trafficking charges and a reduced sentence on the financial crimes. 10 years maximum. Federal facility of my choosing." Torres stood up. "I need to consult with my supervisors." "Consult fast," Catherine said. "Because in about 6 hours, the people running the European end of this network are going to realize that Banning and Voss didn't make it to London. And when they do, they're going to start moving those 19 people who are scheduled for transfer. They'll scatter them across 4 countries before you can blink, and you will never find them." Torres left the room. She walked directly to the observation area where Nia and Tyson were standing. "You heard all of that?" Torres asked. "Every word Tyson said." "She's leveraging," Torres said. "Classic cooperator play. She wants to trade information for protection. She also might be the only person who can lead us to those 19 people before the window closes," Tyson said. He looked at Nia. "What do you think?" Nia's mind was racing. 18 months of work. 237 victims. 19 more on the verge of disappearing. And the woman who built the system that made it all possible was sitting in the next room offering to tear it down in exchange for a lighter sentence. "No immunity on the trafficking charges," Nia said. She knew. She knew exactly what that money was paying for, and she built the system anyway. She doesn't get to walk away from that. "If we push too hard, she shuts down and lawyers up," Torres said. "And those 19 people vanish." "Then give her a reduced recommendation on the financial charges," Nia said. "Tell her the trafficking charges will be presented to the judge with a notation of her cooperation. The judge will factor it in at sentencing. But she does not get immunity for trafficking. That is not negotiable." Tyson studied her. "That's a hard line, Nia. Those are real people, Tyson. 237 real people who were moved like cargo through my airline while this woman counted the money. She doesn't get to negotiate her way out of accountability for that. Not tonight. Not ever." Tyson turned to Torres. "Take the counteroffer. Reduced recommendation on financials cooperation noted for trafficking sentencing. If she balks, remind her that we already have the laptop and will get there eventually with or without her. She just gets to decide how much time she saves us and how much that's worth to a judge." Torres nodded and walked back into the interrogation room. Through the glass, Nia watched Catherine Liang receive the counteroffer. She watched the calculation happen again behind those sharp eyes. She watched the woman who had designed a system to erase human beings from existence weigh the value of her own freedom against the reality of what she had done. Catherine closed her eyes. When she opened them, she nodded once. "I'll take it," she said. Torres slid a notepad and pen across the table. "Start with the 19 people scheduled for transfer. Where are they now?" Catherine picked up the pen. Her hand was steady. "They're being held in a warehouse facility outside Dover. It operates under a commercial fishing company called North Channel Maritime. The company is owned by a trust registered in the Cayman Islands. The trust is managed by a law firm in Geneva that handles all of the network's European legal work. The people are moved by truck to the port, then transferred to container ships that dock in Calais and Rotterdam." She began drawing a diagram on the notepad. Lines connecting names, locations, dates. The architecture of human misery laid out in neat, precise strokes. Tyson was already on his radio. "London desk, this is Marshal Solis. We have an active cooperator, 19 potential victims at a facility in Dover. Commercial fishing company called North Channel Maritime. I need tactical teams staged within the hour. This is time critical. The response came back immediately. Copy, Marshal. Coordinating with Metropolitan Police and Border Force. Teams will be ready within 90 minutes. Naya stepped back from the glass. Her chest was tight. 19 people in a warehouse, waiting to be loaded into containers like products on a shipping manifest. And the network that put them there had been using her airline, her planes, her routes to make it happen. She pulled out her phone. It was 1:47 a.m. The emergency board meeting was in 43 minutes. She had 13 missed calls, 5 from Raymond Park, 3 from board members who had apparently already been woken up, 2 from numbers she didn't recognize, and 3 from her mother who had undoubtedly seen Grace Holloway's post and was probably sitting in her living room in Atlanta praying and furious in equal measure. Naya called her mother first. Eleanor Solace picked up before the first ring finished. "Baby, are you safe?" "I'm safe, Mama." "Tyson is with you." "He's right here." "I saw what happened. That post is everywhere. Every news channel is picking it up. CNN just ran a breaking news banner. Airline owner removed from own flight in apparent racial incident. They're going to want to talk to you." "They can wait," Nia said. "Nia Renee Solace, you listen to me." Her mother's voice had the weight of every Sunday sermon and every kitchen table conversation she had ever delivered. "What that man did to you tonight was evil, pure and simple evil. But what you do next is going to define not just you, but every person who sees themselves in your story. You hear me? I hear you, Mama. Don't let anger drive the car, baby. You're smarter than that. You're better than that. Let justice drive. Let truth drive. And when you stand up in front of those cameras and the whole world is watching, you remember whose daughter you are." Nia's eyes burned. She pressed her fingers against them and took a breath that shook on the way in. "I love you, Mama. I love you more. Now go handle your business." Nia hung up and stood still for a moment. In the distance, she could hear the hum of federal activity agents moving through the terminal radios, crackling phones ringing, the machinery of justice grinding forward. Raymond Park called back. "Board's ready. Everyone's on. They've all seen the news." "Nia, I have to warn you, the mood is mixed. Some members are concerned about the criminal investigation. Others are concerned about the stock price. And Gerald Foster is already pushing for a public statement that distances the company from the incident." "Gerald Foster can push all he wants," Nia said. "I own 53% of this company. He owns 4. Get the call started. I'll be on in 5 minutes." She found a quiet corner of the terminal, put in her earbuds, and connected to the video conference. 12 faces appeared on her screen. Some were in home offices. Some were in bedrooms hastily dressed. Gerald Foster, a 68-year-old man who had been on Transcontinental's board for 15 years, was sitting in what appeared to be a wine cellar wearing a bathrobe. "Good evening," Nia said. "I apologize for the hour. I won't apologize for the urgency." "Dr. Solace," Gerald said immediately. "Before we begin, I want to express the board's concern about the manner in which tonight's events have unfolded. The optics of a federal action at JFK connected to our airline are extremely damaging. We need to get ahead of this story before the markets open Monday." "Gerald, I'm going to stop you right there," Nia said. "The optics of a federal action are not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is that a criminal trafficking network has been using Transcontinental Airways as a logistics platform to move human beings across international borders. Our planes, our routes, our systems. This happened on our watch, and I intend to address it completely." Silence. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. A woman named Patricia Deng, who controlled 7% of the company's shares, spoke next. "Nia, how long have you known about this?" "My team identified the financial irregularities 18 months ago. I launched a private investigation in coordination with federal authorities. The acquisition itself was partly designed to give me the operational authority to dismantle the network from the inside." "You're saying you bought this airline to catch criminals?" Gerald sputtered. "I bought this airline because it's a good company that was being used by bad people, and the only way to stop them was to take control." Another board member, a quiet man named James Worthington, leaned toward his camera. "How many people are implicated within the company?" "We don't know yet," Nia said. "But I've ordered a full internal audit, every department, every employee with access to route scheduling, cargo manifests, and passenger booking systems. If anyone inside Transcontinental facilitated this network even unknowingly, we will find them. This will destroy us, Gerald muttered. No, Gerald. Covering it up would destroy us. Transparency will save us. The public is going to learn what happened on Flight 247 tonight. They're going to learn that a black woman was thrown off her own airplane. And then they're going to learn that the man who demanded it was a human trafficker. The question isn't whether people will be outraged. They will be. The question is whether this company stands with the trafficker or the woman he tried to erase. Nobody spoke for 6 full seconds. Patricia Deng broke the silence. I'm with Nia. Full transparency. Full cooperation with federal authorities. And I want a public statement before sunrise. Seconded, said James Worthington. Gerald opened his mouth, looked around at the other faces on the screen, and closed it again. He knew when he was outnumbered. The statement goes out at 6 a.m. Eastern, Nia said. I'll draft it myself. In the meantime, I need the board's authorization for 3 immediate actions. First, suspension of all crew members involved in tonight's incident, pending a full investigation. Second, appointment of an independent review committee to examine our customer relations protocols, specifically how tier status is used to influence crew decisions. And third, creation of a victim support fund, initial allocation of $10 million to assist the individuals identified in the trafficking investigation. $10 million, Gerald choked. 237 people, Gerald. Men, women, and children. Moved through our planes like luggage. 10 million is a starting point, not a ceiling. The vote was unanimous. Even Gerald raised his hand, though he looked like each finger weighed 100 pounds. Nia ended the call and pulled out her earbuds. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her knees and breathed. Tyson appeared around the corner. His expression told her something had happened. London team just confirmed, he said. They've located the Dover facility. North Channel Maritime. Satellite imagery shows activity consistent with what Liang described. They're going in at dawn local time. That's about 4 hours from now. 19 people, Nia said. If Liang's information is accurate, we're going to bring them home. And if it's not? Tyson's jaw tightened. Then we keep looking. We don't stop. Nia nodded. She stood up and looked through the terminal windows. The sky outside was still dark, but somewhere on the eastern horizon, the faintest suggestion of gray was beginning to appear. Her phone buzzed. A message from Agent Torres. Liang is still talking. She's given us 6 additional names. One of them is a sitting member of Parliament in the UK. Another is a retired Transcontinental Airways executive who served on the board until 2 years ago. Nia read the message twice. A former board member. Someone who had sat in the same meetings, voted on the same budgets, shaken the same hands. Someone who had used their position inside the company to help build the very network Nia had spent 18 months trying to destroy. She forwarded the message to Raymond Park with one line. Pull every record connected to this name. Everything. Going back 20 years. Then she put her phone down and stared at the wall. The story she had walked into tonight was so much bigger than a man in first class who didn't like the color of her skin. It was bigger than Brenda's cowardice and Marianne's compliance. It was bigger than platinum membership cards and meal vouchers and economy class seats offered as consolation prizes for human dignity. This was about a system. A system that valued status over humanity, power over truth, money over lives. And Nia was standing right in the middle of it, holding the one thing that system feared most. The authority to tear it all apart. Her phone buzzed one more time. It was a text from Derek Okafor, the young flight attendant who had tried to speak up. Dr. Solis, I don't know if you'll see this, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I should have done more. I should have stood in front of that aisle and refused to let them take you. I was scared of losing my job, and I let that fear stop me from doing the right thing. I won't let that happen again. Nia read the message and typed back 2 words. I know. 4:17 a.m. The terminal was quiet in the way that airports get in the dead hours, that hollow stillness where every footstep echoes and every voice carries farther than it should. But inside the secured area near Gate 14, there was nothing quiet about what was happening. Nia had been awake for 45 hours now. Her body was running on black coffee and something deeper than adrenaline. Something that felt like a fire that had been lit so far down in her bones that sleep couldn't touch it. She sat at the operations table, across from Tyson, who was on his 3rd phone call in 10 minutes, coordinating with teams in 3 different time zones. Agent Torres walked in carrying a printed stack of documents and dropped them on the table with a weight that made both Solaces look up. "Liang won't stop talking," Torres said. "She's given us everything, every account, every routing number, every contact. She's drawn out the entire network like a blueprint. But 10 minutes ago, she said something that changes everything." Tyson put his phone down. "What did she say?" Torres pulled a single sheet from the stack and placed it in front of them. It was a printout of an internal Transcontinental Airways memo dated 14 months ago. The subject line read, "VIP Client Protocol Review." The memo was addressed to the airline's head of customer relations, and it was signed by someone named Howard Garfield. "Howard Garfield," Nia said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He was Transcontinental's chief operating officer for 11 years. He retired 2 years ago." "He didn't retire," Torres said. "According to Liang, he was pushed out quietly after an internal audit flagged some irregularities in cargo operations. The company buried the findings and gave him a golden parachute, $12 million in severance, a non-disclosure agreement, and a seat on the advisory council that he still holds today." Nia felt something cold move through her stomach. Howard Garfield had been one of the first executives to welcome her during the acquisition process. He had shaken her hand, smiled warmly, and said he was thrilled to see fresh leadership. He had offered to be a resource to help with the transition. He had seemed like a kind grandfatherly figure who genuinely cared about the company's future. "Liang says Garfield built the internal infrastructure," Torres continued. "He's the one who modified the cargo manifest systems to allow phantom bookings. He's the one who created the VIP protocol that gave certain platinum members, including banning, special access to route information and scheduling changes. He embedded the trafficking logistics inside the airline's legitimate operations so deeply that no external audit would ever catch it. It took someone buying the entire company and looking from the inside to find it. That's why the previous board buried the audit findings," Nia said. "They weren't covering up incompetence, they were protecting Garfield." "Some of them were," Torres said. "Liang identified 3 former board members who received payments from the network. One of them is Gerald Foster." The name hit Nia like a physical blow. Gerald Foster. The man who had sat on her emergency board call less than 2 hours ago. The man who had worried about stock prices while 237 trafficking victims were scattered across 2 continents. The man who had voted yes on her proposals with a hand that looked like it weighed 100 pounds. Now she knew why. Gerald Foster has been receiving quarterly payments from a shell company called Pacific Ridge Holdings for the past 6 years, Torres said. The payments total approximately $4.2 million. Pacific Ridge Holdings is one of the companies Catherine Liang created specifically for the trafficking network. Nia stood up. Her chair scraped back hard against the floor. She walked 3 steps away from the table and stood with her back to Tyson and Torres, her hands pressed against her forehead. Gerald Foster had sat across from her in board meetings. He had reviewed her acquisition proposal. He had voted to approve her as chairwoman. And the entire time he had been on the payroll of the very network she was trying to destroy. "He knew," Nia said. "Gerald knew what I was doing. He knew why I was buying this company. And he sat there and let it happen because he thought he could manage me. He thought he could steer me away from the truth. Or he thought the network was too well hidden for anyone to find," Tyson said. "These people operate on arrogance, Nia. The same arrogance that made Banning think he could throw you off a plane and face no consequences. They genuinely believe they're untouchable." Nia turned around. "Where is Gerald right now?" "His home address is in Greenwich, Connecticut," Torres said. "We can have agents there within the hour." "Do it," Tyson said. "Add him to the warrant. I want him in custody before sunrise." Torres stepped out to make the call. Nia sat back down. She pulled Gerald Foster's profile up on her phone. His official photo showed a silver-haired man with a confident smile and a navy suit. He looked like a man you'd trust with your retirement fund. He looked like somebody's grandfather. And he had been profiting from the enslavement of human beings for 6 years. Nia's phone rang. It was Raymond Park. "Raymond, I need you to listen very carefully," Nia said. "Gerald Foster is compromised. He's connected to the trafficking network. Federal agents are moving to arrest him right now. I need an emergency removal from the board effective immediately. Use Article 7 of the Corporate Charter, the clause for criminal conduct. And I need you to freeze every account connected to Pacific Ridge Holdings." Raymond was silent for 5 seconds. Nia Gerald Foster hosted my daughter's wedding reception at his estate last summer. My wife plays tennis with his wife every Thursday. Raymond. I know. I'll file the removal within the hour. But Nia, if Gerald is dirty, we need to look at everyone he touched, every committee he chaired, every decision he influenced. This could go deeper than any of us realize. I'm counting on it, Nia said. She hung up and looked at Tyson. He was reading something on his phone, and his expression had shifted. Something had changed. What is it? Nia asked. Tyson held up his phone. Dover. The London team moved up the timeline. They just breached the North Channel Maritime Facility 17 minutes ago. Nia's heart stopped. And they found them, Nia. All 19. Alive. Being held in a modified shipping container behind the warehouse. The youngest is a 14-year-old girl from Nigeria. The oldest is a 53-year-old man from Bangladesh. They're being transported to medical facilities right now. Nia pressed both hands flat against the table. She breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth. She did it 3 times before she trusted herself to speak. All 19, she said. All 19. And the London team arrested 6 operatives at the facility, including someone named David Ashworth. Ashworth, Nia repeated. Liang mentioned that name. He runs the European logistics arm. He did, Tyson said. Past tense. He's in custody now. Nia closed her eyes. She thought about that 14-year-old girl from Nigeria. She thought about what that child had endured, what she had survived, what her life had been reduced to, inside a shipping container behind a fishing warehouse in Dover. She thought about the 237 others who had come before her, moved through the same system, processed by the same people hidden behind the same corporate structures. And she thought about Preston Banning, sitting in seat 1B, sipping champagne, demanding that Brenda remove the black woman who was ruining his flight. All while his laptop held the names and faces of every person his network had stolen. I want to see Banning, Nia said. Tyson looked at her sharply. Why? Because he still thinks this is about a seating dispute. He still thinks the worst thing that happened tonight is that he got caught with financial records on his laptop. He has no idea about Dover. He has no idea that Liang turned. And he has no idea that the woman he threw off his plane just saved 19 lives. You want to tell him? I want him to understand exactly what he lost tonight, and I want him to understand who took it from him. Tyson considered this for a long moment. You can't interrogate him. His lawyer arrived 30 minutes ago, but there's nothing stopping me from informing a suspect of new developments in his case, and there's nothing stopping you from being in the room when I do it. They walked together down the corridor to interview room A. Through the door, Nia could hear the low murmur of conversation. Tyson opened the door, and there was Preston Banning. He looked nothing like the man who had thrown her backpack into the aisle 5 hours ago. His jacket was gone. His tie was loosened. His silver hair was disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, and his skin had taken on a grayish pallor that made him look 10 years older than he had at the gate. Beside him sat a man in a pinstripe suit who radiated the particular brand of calm confidence that only comes from charging $800 an hour. The lawyer spoke first. Marshall Salas, my client has been cooperative and patient. If you don't have new charges to present, I'd like to discuss the terms of his release. There will be no release, Tyson said. And yes, I have new developments to present. He sat down across from Preston. Nia remained standing near the door where Preston couldn't avoid seeing her even if he tried. Preston's eyes flicked to Nia. Something moved across his face. Anger, recognition, and underneath both a growing terror that he was working very hard to hide. Your associate, Catherine Liang, is cooperating with federal authorities, Tyson said. She has provided detailed information about the structure and operations of your network, including financial records, routing systems, and the identities of all participants. The lawyer put his hand on Preston's arm. Don't respond. Preston didn't need the instruction. His face had gone completely white. His lips were pressed together so tightly they had almost disappeared. Additionally, Tyson continued, approximately 30 minutes ago, a joint operation between U.S. federal authorities and UK law enforcement raided a facility in Dover, England operated by your network under the cover of a company called North Channel Maritime. 19 individuals who were being held for transport were recovered alive. 6 of your European operatives are in custody, including David Ashworth. The lawyer's composure cracked. He hadn't known about any of this. He leaned toward Preston. What is he talking about? Preston didn't answer. He was staring at the table. His hands, the same hands that had grabbed Nia's backpack and thrown it into the aisle, were trembling. "And one more thing," Tyson said. He leaned forward. "The woman you demanded be removed from Flight 247 tonight, the woman you said didn't belong in first class, the woman you called nobody." He gestured toward Nia. "Dr. Nia Solis is the majority shareholder and chairwoman of Transcontinental Airways. She has been leading the investigation into your network for the past 18 months. The acquisition of this airline was designed specifically to gain the operational access needed to dismantle your operation from the inside." Preston looked up. He looked at Nia, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that went beyond arrogance, or anger, or fear. She saw a man who was watching his entire understanding of the world collapse. Every assumption he had ever made about who mattered and who didn't, who had power and who was powerless, who belonged and who was nobody. All of it was burning down in front of him, and the woman holding the match was wearing a gray hoodie and white sneakers. "That's impossible," Preston whispered. "It's documented," Nia said. Her voice was steady. "Every share, every vote, every filing. I've owned your airline for 72 hours, Mr. Banning, and I've owned your secrets for 18 months. Preston's lawyer stood up. "I need to speak with my client privately, immediately." Tyson stood. "Take your time. He's not going anywhere." Nia and Tyson walked out. The door closed behind them, and Nia leaned against the corridor wall. She let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside her chest for a year and a half. "How did that feel?" Tyson asked. "It felt like the beginning," Nia said. "Not the end." At 5:22 a.m. Tyson received confirmation that Gerald Foster had been taken into custody at his Greenwich estate. He had answered the door in silk pajamas and had the audacity to ask if the agents could wait while he made a phone call. They could not. At 5:41 a.m. Raymond Park sent Nia the final draft of the company's public statement. She read it twice, made 3 changes, and approved it for release at 6 a.m. At 5:55 a.m. Agent Torres reported that Catherine Liang had completed her full debriefing. The final count of individuals directly involved in the network was 29 across 8 countries. Federal agencies in 4 nations were now coordinating simultaneous operations. At 5:58 a.m. Nia received a text from an unknown number. She opened it and read the words 3 times. Dr. Solis. "My name is Amara Obi. I am the mother of the 14-year-old girl who was recovered in Dover this morning. A social worker gave me this number and told me you are the reason my daughter is alive. I do not have words. I have only tears. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Nia put the phone down. She pressed her hand against her mouth, and for the first time that night she cried. Not the polite, controlled tears of a woman managing a crisis. These were the tears of a human being who had been carrying a weight so enormous that only the release of knowing it mattered, that it actually saved someone, could break through the walls she had built to keep functioning. Tyson was there. He didn't say anything. He just stood beside her and let her feel what she needed to feel. At 6 a.m., the statement went live. Transcontinental Airways confirms that a criminal investigation has resulted in multiple arrests in connection with financial crimes and human trafficking. The company is cooperating fully with federal authorities. We are also aware of an incident aboard Flight 247 in which a passenger was improperly removed from first class. That passenger was our chairwoman, Dr. Nia Solis. The crew members involved have been suspended. A full investigation into the airline's customer relations protocols is underway. We believe that every passenger deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance, their membership status, or the color of their skin. By 6:14 a.m., the statement had been quoted on every major news network. CNN ran it as breaking news. The New York Times published an article within 20 minutes. BBC picked it up for their morning broadcast. The hashtag #IniaStandWithNia began trending on social media before most of America had finished their first cup of coffee. But the story that caught fire fastest wasn't the corporate statement. It was Grace Holloway's post. The original eyewitness account from the woman in seat 14F who had watched Nia walk through economy class and felt the shame of doing nothing. That post had now been shared over 400,000 times. News outlets were calling Grace for interviews. She had become an accidental witness to a moment that the entire world wanted to understand. Grace Holloway posted a follow-up at 6:30 a.m. People keep asking me what Dr. Solace looked like when she walked past my seat. I'll tell you what I saw. I saw a woman who was being humiliated, and she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She looked straight ahead, and she walked. And in that walk was more dignity than the man who threw her out will ever possess in his entire life. That post was shared 600,000 times by noon. Back at JFK, Nia stood in the terminal and watched the sun come up through the windows. The sky shifted from gray to pale gold, to a deep warm orange that spread across the horizon like a promise. She hadn't slept. She wasn't sure when she would sleep. But for the first time in 18 months, the weight on her shoulders had changed shape. It was still heavy, still enormous, but now it carried something else inside it. Hope. Tyson walked up beside her. London team is reporting in. They've expanded the raids. 3 more facilities hit in the last hour. 41 additional victims recovered. The network is collapsing, Nia. Ashworth is talking. Voss is talking. Liang is still talking. Every time one of them opens their mouth, another piece falls. 41 more, Nia said. And counting. We're not done yet. Nia nodded. She turned away from the window and looked at her brother. What happens to Banning now? He'll be arraigned this morning. Federal magistrate. The charges are substantial. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, human trafficking. His lawyer is already trying to negotiate, but with Liang and Voss both cooperating, Banning's leverage is exactly 0. He's looking at 25 years minimum, more likely life. And Brenda Marianne, suspended like the board authorized. An internal investigation will determine whether their actions were purely prejudicial or whether they had any knowledge of Banning's activities. My gut says they were just garden-variety bigots who saw a platinum card and a white face and decided that was worth more than your humanity. But we'll find out. Nia thought about Brenda's tears. She thought about Marianne's rigid jaw. She thought about Derek Okafor's text message, his apology, his promise to do better. She thought about how easily a system built on bias could become a system built on exploitation, how one kind of blindness feeds another, how the refusal to see certain people as fully human is the first step toward treating them as something less. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was a number she recognized. Margaret Chen, the most influential business journalist in the country. Margaret had been trying to get an interview with Nia for months, ever since the acquisition rumors first surfaced. Nia answered. Dr. Solace, I know you've had an extraordinary night, Margaret said. I'm not going to ask for an interview right now. I'm calling because I want you to know that I've been reporting on corporate America for 30 years, and what I've seen in the last 6 hours is unlike anything I've ever witnessed. You're going to be under a microscope. Every decision you make from here forward will be scrutinized. I'm calling to ask you one question off the record because I think the answer matters. Ask? Nia said. Why didn't you reveal who you were on that plane? You could have stopped everything with one sentence. Why did you let them remove you? Nia was quiet for a moment. She watched the last of the sunrise colors fade into the bright clear blue of a new morning. Because I needed to know the truth, Nia said. Not the truth people show you when they know you're powerful. The truth they show you when they think you're nobody. That's the only truth that matters, Margaret. And now I have it. Margaret was silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, When you're ready to go on the record, call me first. I will, Nia said. She hung up and put her phone in her pocket. Tyson was watching her with an expression that sat somewhere between admiration and concern. You need to eat something, he said. And you need to sleep. I need to go back to that plane first, Nia said. Why? Because there's a young man named Derek Okafor who tried to do the right thing and got shut down by his own colleagues, and there are 200 passengers who sat in those seats for 5 hours while federal agents processed a crime scene around them. They deserve to hear from me directly. Tyson shook his head slowly. You just took down a trafficking ring, exposed a corrupt board member, and saved 19 lives, and you want to go talk to the passengers. They're my passengers, Tyson. This is my airline. And the first thing they're going to remember about Transcontinental Airways is what happened on Flight 247. I get to decide what the second thing is. She straightened her hoodie. She adjusted her backpack. And she walked back toward Gate 14, toward the plane that had tried to erase her, ready to show every person on board that the woman they removed from first class was the same woman who was going to rebuild everything from the ground up. Nia walked back through the jet bridge for the third time that night. The first time she had walked in as a tired woman looking for her seat. The second time she had walked in flanked by federal agents to watch Preston Banning get handcuffed. This time, she walked in alone. The cabin was different now. The overhead lights were dimmed to a pale amber. Most of the passengers had been awake all night held on the grounded aircraft, while federal teams worked around them. Some had slept in awkward positions across armrests and tray tables. Others had been glued to their phones watching the story of their own flight explode across the internet in real time. A few had given up entirely and were just sitting in silence, staring at nothing. When Nia stepped through the first-class curtain, every head turned. She saw recognition flash across dozens of faces. They had seen the posts. They had read the articles. They had watched the video that a passenger in row 3 had uploaded, the one that showed Preston Banning jabbing his finger at a black woman in a gray hoodie, while a blonde flight attendant stood by and smiled. That video had 47 million views and counting. And now the woman from the video was standing in front of them. Nia didn't go to the intercom. She didn't use a microphone. She stood in the aisle between first class and business class and spoke in a voice that was clear enough to carry through the forward cabin and quiet enough to feel like a conversation. My name is Dr. Nia Solis. As of 72 hours ago, I am the majority shareholder and chairwoman of Transcontinental Airways. Most of you have probably figured that out by now. A few people nodded. Nobody spoke. I want to start by apologizing to every single person on this flight, not just for what happened to me tonight, but for what happened to all of you. You bought a ticket to London. Instead, you got a front row seat to something that never should have happened. You've been stuck on this plane for hours. You've been questioned by federal agents. You've watched your flight become a crime scene and a news story. That's not the experience you paid for, and I'm sorry. A woman in business class raised her hand tentatively, like she was in school. Dr. Solis, is it true about the trafficking? The news is saying they found people being held in England because of what happened tonight. It's true, Nia said. 19 people were recovered from a facility in Dover, England this morning. They were being held by a criminal network that used this airline's routes and systems to move victims across international borders. The man who was arrested in Seat 1B tonight, Preston Banning, was a central figure in that network. The cabin went absolutely still. A man in row 6 pressed his hand over his mouth. The woman who had asked the question sat back in her seat like the air had been pushed out of her lungs. I'm telling you this because you deserve the truth, Nia continued. You were on this plane with a man who trafficked human beings. The airline you trusted to fly you safely across the ocean was being used as a tool for one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. And I bought this company specifically to stop it. How long have you known? The man in row 6 asked. 18 months. My team identified financial irregularities in Transcontinental's books a year and a half ago. We traced them to a network of shell companies connected to trafficking operations across 6 countries. The acquisition was designed to give me the inside access I needed to gather evidence and work with federal authorities to bring the network down. And tonight was the night, Grace Holloway said from seat 14F. Her voice was shaking but strong. You walked onto this plane knowing what Banning was. Nia looked at her. I didn't know Banning would be on this specific flight. That was coincidence, or something more than coincidence depending on what you believe. But yes, I knew who he was. I knew what he was involved in. What I didn't expect was that he would single me out, demand I be removed, and that the crew would comply. Why didn't you just tell them who you were? Someone called out from the back. Nia took a breath. She had answered this question already for Margaret Chen for herself. But this audience deserved a fuller answer, because it shouldn't matter who I am, she said. I could have been anyone, a teacher, a nurse, a grandmother going to visit family in London, a college student on her first international trip. It shouldn't matter whether the person in seat 1A owns the airline or just bought a ticket. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. The moment we create a system where your treatment depends on your title, your status, your skin color, or the price of your clothes, we've already lost something that we can't afford to lose. Grace Holloway was crying openly. She wasn't the only one. I'm going to fix this, Nia said. Not just the crew members involved, though they will be held accountable. I'm going to fix the system that made this possible. The culture that told Brenda and Marianne that a platinum card was worth more than a person. The protocols that allowed someone like Preston Banning to weaponize his status against another human being while the people in uniform looked the other way. She paused. She looked down the aisle, past business class, past premium economy, all the way back to the last rows of economy where passengers were standing in the aisle, trying to see her, trying to hear her. "Every passenger on this flight will receive a full refund for your ticket," Nia said. "You will also receive a personal letter from me explaining what happened and what changes are being made. And if any of you were recording when the incident occurred, I'm asking you not to delete those videos. They're evidence. Not just for the legal proceedings, but for the conversation this country needs to have about how we treat each other." A man in first class stood up. He was older, white-haired, wearing a rumpled cardigan. His eyes were red. "Dr. Solis, I was in seat 2C. I was 3 feet away when that man spoke to you. I heard every word he said, and I did nothing. I sat there, and I did nothing." His voice broke. "I've been sitting here for 5 hours thinking about what kind of man that makes me." "It makes you human," Nia said. "Most people freeze when they witness something like that. It's not a character flaw. It's a survival response. What matters is what you do after. You're standing up now. That counts." The man nodded and sat down slowly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Nia spent another 20 minutes with the passengers. She walked through every section of the plane. She shook hands. She listened. A mother in economy told her that her 8-year-old daughter had watched the incident and asked, "Mommy, why did that man hate that lady?" Nia knelt down and looked the little girl in the eye and said, "Some people haven't learned yet that everyone matters the same. But you know that already, don't you?" The girl nodded solemnly and gave Nia a hug that lasted longer than expected. When Nia finally walked off the plane for the last time, Tyson was waiting at the gate. He had his phone in his hand and an expression she couldn't read. "What now?" she asked. "Preston Banning just tried to make a deal." Nia's jaw tightened. "What kind of deal?" "His lawyer contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office 15 minutes ago. Banning is offering to surrender all of his financial assets, approximately $340 million, in exchange for a reduced sentence. He wants 20 years instead of life. And he wants to serve it in a minimum security facility." 20 years, Nia said flatly. "For trafficking 237 people. That's what he's proposing." "And what did the U.S. Attorney say?" Tyson's mouth twitched, something that might have been satisfaction. "She said no. She said the evidence is overwhelming, the cooperating witnesses are credible, and the government intends to pursue the maximum sentence on every charge. She also said, and I'm quoting her directly, Mr. Banning had decades to negotiate his way out of consequences. That era is over." Nia closed her eyes. She let those words settle into a place where they could do some good. "There's something else," Tyson said. "The UK operations are expanding faster than anyone expected. Since the Dover raid, British authorities have identified 2 additional facilities connected to the network. One near Liverpool, one outside Glasgow. Joint raids are being planned for this afternoon. Estimated victim count could exceed another 50 people. 50 more. On top of the 19 from Dover. On top of the 41 from the earlier raids. The numbers kept growing, and each number was a person, a life, a story of suffering that had been hidden behind financial spreadsheets and phantom bookings and platinum membership perks. "The Victim Support Fund," Nia said. "I authorized 10 million last night. Double it." "Nia, the board approved 10. To change that, you'd need another vote. I own 53% Tyson. I am the vote. Call Raymond, 20 million. Effective immediately." Tyson nodded and stepped away to make the call. Nia pulled out her phone and checked the time. 7:48 a.m. She scrolled through the notifications that had accumulated since sunrise. Among the hundreds of messages, one caught her eye. It was from Derek Okafor. "Dr. Solis, I know you said we'd talk about my future with the airline. I want you to know that whatever happens last night changed me. I've been a flight attendant for 3 years, and I've seen things I let go because I was afraid. Passengers treated badly because of how they looked. Crew members who played favorites based on skin color and status. I told myself it wasn't my business. Last night showed me that everything is my business. Whatever you need from me, I'm ready." Nia typed back. "Come to the Transcontinental corporate office at noon today. Ask for me by name." At 9 a.m. Nia finally left JFK. She rode in the back of a black SUV that Tyson had arranged, flanked by a security detail she hadn't asked for, but didn't argue with. The streets of New York were waking up to a story that had already consumed the internet and was now spilling into television, radio, and every conversation happening across kitchen tables, office break rooms, and subway cars from Manhattan to the outer boroughs. At 9:17 a.m., her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number from Washington, D.C. She answered. "Dr. Salas, this is Senator Diane Mitchell. I chair the Senate Commerce Committee. I've been briefed on the situation involving Transcontinental Airways, and I want you to know that my office is opening a formal inquiry into airline industry practices related to passenger treatment and the exploitation of corporate systems for criminal activity. I'd like to invite you to testify before the committee." "When?" Nia asked. "Next Thursday." "I'll be there." "Dr. Salas, one more thing. What happened to you last night is not an isolated incident. My office receives hundreds of complaints every year from passengers who were mistreated based on race, gender, disability, or economic status. The airlines bury these complaints. They settle quietly. They protect their brand. You just made it impossible for them to do that anymore. That's the idea, Senator." At 9:45 a.m., Nia arrived at Transcontinental Airways corporate headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. She had never been inside this building as chairwoman. She had visited during the acquisition negotiations, but always as an outsider, always escorted, always treated with the careful politeness that corporations reserve for people who haven't signed the papers yet. Today was different. She walked through the front entrance in her gray hoodie, her faded jeans, and her white sneakers. The same outfit she had been wearing for nearly 20 hours. The same outfit that Preston Banning had looked at and seen worthlessness. The same outfit that Brenda had assessed and found lacking. The same outfit that was now on the front page of every newspaper in the country. The security guard at the front desk looked up, recognized her immediately, and stood at attention. "Dr. Salas, good morning. Welcome." "Good morning," Nia said. "Please let the executive floor know I'm coming up." She rode the elevator alone. When the doors opened, a row of senior executives was waiting. Some she had met during the acquisition. Others she was seeing for the first time. All of them wore the expression of people who had been awake since 2 a.m., watching their careers flash before their eyes. Raymond Park stepped forward. "Nia, the press is downstairs. 37 camera crews, every major outlet. They want a statement." "They'll get one. But first I need to handle something." She walked past the executives down a hallway and into a conference room. Seated at the table were Brenda Marianne and 3 other crew members who had been on duty during Flight 247. They had been brought directly from JFK under the escort of airline security. They looked exhausted, frightened, and very, very small. Nia sat down across from them. She didn't bring a lawyer. She didn't bring a witness. She brought herself. "Brenda," Nia said, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer. In your 17 years with this airline, how many times have you accommodated a request from a premium passenger to have another passenger moved based on their appearance?" Brenda's lips trembled. She stared at the table. "I don't know the exact number." "More than once?" "Yes." "More than 10 times?" Silence. Then barely audible, "Yes." "And were those passengers always people of color?" Brenda's face crumpled. The tears came hard and fast and ugly. "I didn't think of it that way. I swear I didn't. It was always about the premium member. It was always about keeping them happy. That's what we were trained to do." "You were trained to provide excellent service," Nia said. "You were not trained to participate in racial discrimination. The fact that you didn't recognize it as discrimination is exactly the problem I'm here to solve." Nia turned to Marianne. "You threatened me with security removal. You classified a woman sitting quietly in her assigned seat as a disturbance. Was that part of your training?" Marianne's jaw was clenched so tight that the tendons in her neck stood out. "I made a judgment call. You made a judgment about who I was based on how I looked. And your judgment was wrong. Not because I turned out to be the chairwoman. Your judgment was wrong because no human being should be treated the way you treated me, regardless of who they are." Marianne's composure finally broke. Her chin trembled. She pressed her hand against her forehead. "I know," she whispered. "I know." Nia looked at each of them in turn. 5 crew members who represented everything that was broken about the culture she had inherited. They weren't monsters. They weren't villains. They were ordinary people who had been shaped by a system that rewarded compliance and punished compassion. A system that measured human worth in platinum points and frequent flyer miles. Brenda and Marianne, your employment with Transcontinental Airways is terminated effective immediately, Nia said. You will be placed on an industry-wide watch list that will be shared with every major carrier. I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing it because the next person you mistreat might not have the resources to fight back, and I refuse to put that person at risk. Brenda sobbed openly. Marianne sat rigidly, tears streaming silently down her face. Nia turned to the 3 remaining crew members. You are suspended pending the outcome of the full investigation. If the investigation determines that you acted in compliance with the discriminatory request or failed to intervene when you could have your employment, will also be terminated. If it determines that you were following direct orders from senior crew and had no opportunity to object, your suspension will be lifted, and you will be enrolled in mandatory bias training before returning to duty. She stood up. This isn't just about what happened on Flight 247. This is about what's been happening on flights across this airline for years. It ends today. She left the room. Raymond was waiting outside. Press conference in 15 minutes, he said. Legal wants to review your statement. Legal can review it after I say it, Nia said. At 10:30 a.m. Nia stepped up to a podium in the Transcontinental Airways lobby. 37 cameras faced her. Hundreds of flashes fired. The room was packed with reporters who had been camped outside since dawn. She had changed nothing about her appearance. Same hoodie, same jeans, same sneakers. She made that choice deliberately. Last night I boarded Transcontinental Flight 247 from New York to London, Nia said. I sat in my assigned seat. A man next to me decided that I didn't belong there based on the color of my skin and the clothes I was wearing. He demanded that the crew remove me, and the crew complied. She paused. Let the cameras click. What that man didn't know is that I am the chairwoman and majority shareholder of this airline. But here's what matters. It should not have taken that revelation to make my treatment unacceptable. A wrong is a wrong, whether the victim is a CEO or a schoolteacher. Dignity is not a perk, it's a right. She gripped the edges of the podium. In the course of tonight's events, federal authorities arrested Preston Banning and multiple co-conspirators in connection with a criminal trafficking network that was using Transcontinental Airways operations as a cover. 60 individuals have been recovered from captivity so far, with ongoing operations expected to bring that number higher. A former board member of this company has been arrested for his role in facilitating the network. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Nia raised her hand and the room went quiet. I purchased Transcontinental Airways because I believe air travel belongs to everyone. It belongs to the family going on their first vacation. It belongs to the business traveler and the college student and the grandmother and the kid who has never seen the ocean. It does not belong to men like Preston Banning, who believe their wealth gives them the right to decide who matters and who doesn't. She looked directly into the nearest camera. Effective today, Transcontinental Airways is implementing a complete overhaul of its customer service protocols. Tier status will never again be used as leverage over another passenger's rights. Every crew member will undergo mandatory training in anti-discrimination practices. An independent oversight board will be established with authority to investigate complaints of bias and ensure accountability at every level. And a $20 million fund has been established to support the victims of the trafficking network that operated through our systems. She stepped back from the podium. I will be testifying before the Senate Commerce Committee next Thursday. I will be cooperating fully with all federal investigations. And I will be running this airline with the belief that the measure of a company is not how it treats its most powerful customers, but how it treats its most vulnerable ones. Thank you. She walked away from the podium to a wall of noise. Reporters called her name. Cameras followed her every step. Security formed a perimeter around her as she moved toward the elevators. At noon, Derek Okafor walked into the corporate office. He was wearing a pressed white shirt and his hands were shaking. Nia met him personally in the lobby. Derek. I've reviewed your personnel file. I've read the text messages you sent your wife during the incident. And I've listened to the account you gave federal investigators. You tried to do the right thing and you were shut down by your superiors. I should have tried harder, Derek said. You tried. That's more than anyone else in that crew did. I'm promoting you to lead flight attendant on our flagship London route effective next month. And I'm appointing you to the Independent Oversight Board as the crew representative. Your job will be to make sure that what happened to me never happens to anyone else on a transcontinental flight." Derek's eyes filled. He blinked hard and straightened his shoulders. "I won't let you down, Dr. Solis." "I know you won't." At 2:15 p.m., Naya finally sat down in her new office. The door was closed. The phone was off. The television on the wall showed news coverage of the Dover raids, the arrests, the press conference, and the hashtag that was now trending in 47 countries. She opened her laptop and found one unread email. It was from Amara Obi, the mother of the 14-year-old girl recovered in Dover. Dr. Solis: "I am writing from a hospital in London where my daughter is being treated. She is sleeping now. She is safe. The doctors say she will recover. When she woke up this morning and I told her she was free, she asked me who saved her. I told her a woman who refused to be moved. My daughter wants to meet you someday. I hope that is possible. You gave me back my child. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful." Nia closed the laptop. She leaned back in her chair. She pressed her palms against her eyes and breathed. 45 hours ago, she had walked onto a plane in a gray hoodie and white sneakers, carrying nothing but a backpack and a cup of cold coffee. A man had looked at her and seen nobody. A crew had looked at her and seen a problem. A system had looked at her and seen someone disposable. They were all wrong. Because Dr. Nia Solis was never nobody. She was the woman who bought an airline to bring down an empire. She was the sister who texted a federal marshal and brought justice to a gate at JFK. She was the chairwoman who stood in front of the world, in the same clothes she was humiliated in, and refused to change a single thing about herself. And she was the reason a 14-year-old girl in a London hospital woke up free. Preston Banning asked who she was. The whole world found out. And the answer wasn't in her title or her net worth or the shares she controlled. The answer was in the way she walked through that economy cabin with her head held high when every person in power told her she didn't matter. True power was never about dominance. It was never about platinum cards or first-class seats or the ability to make someone disappear. True power was standing up when the whole world tells you to sit down. And Nia Solis never sat down.